Good morning again, everybody, and welcome. I'm just going to go ahead and get started with a couple of announcements as we are finishing getting our food and everything. And of course, you're welcome to grab more coffee, get something else to eat here as we're getting started. Couple of big important announcements. Next week, we are not here. We are not meeting because of fall break. So if you come, there won't be anybody, just FYI, and that's October 19th. We will meet again the week after, so no Real Moms next week. I think Lauren mentioned our Mom Genius Week last week, so if you're thinking about it, maybe you want to share something that you're passionate about or excited about, just come talk to me. Even if you're not 100% sure you want to do it, we can just, let's talk. I just want to make sure that anybody who's sort of thinking gets the opportunity to do that. And then, and Lauren also mentioned Music Man. We have our theatrical production coming soon. Tickets are available online, so make sure you get those. You can. Cooper, we have one of the stars here today. He's getting some breakfast, and he's a little shy, but Cassie's kids are here today. So it's fall break. Yay! My kids are probably still asleep. Okay. One of them definitely is 100% asleep till at least 1 o'clock. Okay. So does anyone else have any announcements? Am I forgetting any big announcements? I don't think so. I think we're good. Okay. Well, I know. I'm saving the last thing until Tosh is done. So don't let me forget. I have something else to tell you at the end. Well, I would like to introduce to you Tasha June, our speaker for today. Tasha is a Korean-American melancholy dreamer, wife, and mom who grew up in a multicultural and biracial home. She has spent her life navigating liminal space. Writing has always been the way God has led her through the ache towards the hope of shalom. Her debut book, Tell Me the Dream Again, Reflections on Family and the Sacred Work of Belonging, is available now wherever books are sold. In fact, right here in this room. How about that, you guys? So exciting. And if you're following along with the notes in the app, the links are there for Tasha's information, her website, and a place to buy her book if you're interested. And she has monthly notes as well, and a blog, and she's a writer. So now I will say also, Tasha is a Real Moms alum. Tasha was at, how many years were you at Real Moms?
I don't know. I was trying to remember a long time.
A long time.
It was a huge chunk of motherhood.
Yeah, I know. And I was there too. So we served together for years as small group leaders with the Real Moms. We met, I don't know, we might have been in this room part of the time. We were on the other side of the building part of the time. And she has taught at Real Moms in the past as well. And I very much enjoyed that and had always been wanting to invite Tasha to come and speak with us. And then she wrote a book, and I was like, well, now you have to come. And so it's perfect. So anyway, would you help me welcome Tasha June?
Thank you, Kara. Okay, it feels weird to be introduced as Tasha June because I think of those of you that know me as Tasha Burgoyne, which is still my name. But Tasha June is my writer name or pen name, whatever you want to call it. And like Kara said, it's been a while since I've been in this room, and I was trying to remember when I was in this building before, and I remembered coming to my very first Real Moms, and it was actually in this room. Most of my memories are in the other room, but it was in this room, and I was a brand new mom, or kind of a brand new mom. I had my oldest, Asher. He was walking and talking, so he wasn't a toddler anymore. But it was my first time going somewhere, dropping him off, and being with a lot of other moms. And I was really nervous, so I drop him off. And I don't know if the childcare room is still the same with the waist-high doors and the little locks. Okay, so I dropped him off. Had all the stuff. His cubby was completely full because I was kind of neurotic. And drop him off, leave him in there. He's fine. Walk, across the building, come in here, walk in, and Kara was actually the first person who talked to me. I think she must have seen the deer in headlights look on my face, oh my gosh, the room was really full. I wasn't sure where to go. So she walks over, super friendly, introduces herself, finds me my table, gives me this binder. And I'm like, okay, great. And then I feel this poke on my back. And so I turn around and there's Asher, just standing there. And I'm like, what in the world? How did you get out? What are you doing? He's like, well, I was done, so I left. And I'm like, okay. So he walked out. Did I leave that mic somewhere? There it is. So he walked out, and I was like, how did you get out? Because they have that special lock on the door. He was like, well, I watched, and I just unlocked it, and then I came to find you. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So this explains his personality, like, to this day. And I have this picture. It's on the left, so that's my family. He's the biggest one now. And that was actually a year ago, so he's even taller. I had cut off the bottom of this picture because his pants never fit. Like every time I turn around, there's like this much sock, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? So he's 14, and very much still that very inquisitive, I'm gonna figure out how to do what I want and do it, and then we'll have to figure it all out later. So he's 14, he just started high school, which is a huge transition for all 5 of us. The little guy next to him, who's actually not that little, Timo, he's going to be 12 on Saturday. He is our little firecracker, feisty as all get out. And then Everly, sitting on my husband Matt's lap, is 8, and she's in 3rd grade. Actually, they're all kind of feisty, so I don't really know. I'm like, aren't you supposed to have some compliant, quiet, like ones? We're both introverted, Matt and I, and so we didn't get that. Anyway, so that's my family, and I'll be talking about them a little bit this morning, so I wanted to introduce you to them. On the other side is a picture of my mom and me, and that's recent, and we look red because we were at Newfields. I don't know if any of you have been there, and we were visiting the Loom in the Van Gogh exhibit, so that was like the sunflower room. Yeah, we look burnt in that picture now that I'm looking at it, but that was just from a couple months ago, and my mom and dad live in Arkansas, so I don't see them very often right now. So when they come, a lot of times they just want to be with the grandkids. The grandkids want to be with them, and of course we want to all be together. So this was like a huge treat. I got to take her down to the art museum. It felt like this little date. And my mom, she rarely gets childlike, and so it was really fun. I don't know if you guys have been to the Loom, like to any of those interactive experiences, but she was like wandering around, and she's got this little like purse backpack, so it was so cute. She was like wandering around because it just looked like a kid, like looking up at the ceiling, like with her mouth wide open. And I like had never seen her like that, like with her inner child kind of unleashed. So this was a treat. That's why I have it up there. And I'm going to be talking about her. She's a huge part of my life. But I also think that our motherhood journeys are inextricably linked to the journeys that our moms have gone through. And so I'll circle back to a little bit more about her and a little bit more about that. But first, I just wanted to take a deep breath and kind of do that together as a group. It's something I need. I don't know if you need it, but since I'm up here, I'm going to have all of us do that. And then I'm going to invite you guys into a spiritual practice that's become meaningful to me. And it's all connected. So if you feel comfortable, finish chewing, close your eyes. And then if you feel comfortable putting your hands on your heart or on your chest, you can do that. You don't have to if that feels too weird. And then we're just going to take a couple of deep breaths together and just kind of get grounded. So breathe in and out. And breathe in again and out. And then take a few more deep breaths yourself and just think about how God is as close as your skin, as your hands over your heart, as your breath, and just with you, with us here. God, thank you for breath. Thank you for these women. Thank you that you are Emmanuel and that you never leave us. So put this picture up on the screen. And what I'm going to invite you guys into is Visio Divina. Have any of you ever done that before? I know, not surprised. So it's kind of like Lectio Divina, if you're familiar with that. The difference is instead of focusing on a short passage of scripture, you're focusing on an image and kind of letting that image prompt feelings, thoughts, and then inviting God into that prompting. This is a favorite picture of mine, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. You guys have instructions on your handouts, but I'd rather you just like let me lead you with my voice. Those are for later. Like if this is something where you're like, I want to practice this at home, I want to take this somewhere and look at an image and try this at home, that's what that's for on your handout. But what we're going to do is just take 2 to 5 minutes to just take in the image, even if it's familiar. Even if you're not really into art, just kind of look at it, take it all in, look at each corner. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Can you guys see it a little bit? Okay, yeah, look over there. So as you look at it, whichever one you're looking at, what thing first grabs your attention? Just keep that in your mind. What do your eyes gravitate towards? Whether it's a color or a detail, one of their faces, where the light hits. So take note of that. If you're like me and you forget like what just happened the last 5 minutes, write it down if you want. Maybe jot something down. And then as you're looking at that, what thoughts come to mind? What emotions swirl or kind of rise up? You can ask God to speak to you through what you've noticed, whether it's an object or whether it's a feeling that the image gives you. And we'll just take another few minutes to just silently listen. Now take in the picture as a whole, kind of peruse through the entire image, and ask yourself, how does this image make me feel? Does it bring up a question or a memory, a passage of scripture, a person? Or a word even? Does anyone want to share anything that kind of came up as they were looking? We're just going to kind of hang on to that, and then you can take it with you later, and maybe even invite God into, like, why did that thing stand out to me, that question, or why did it make me feel this way? So it's something you can kind of chew on a little later. I became aware of this painting because of a Henry Nouwen book, and I know a couple of you have already commented. The Return of the Prodigal Son. Highly recommend. And you could kind of say that this entire book is kind of a long Visio Divina response to his experience of witnessing this painting in person at the Hermitage. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, where he just sat and gazed at it. And, of course, it reminded him of the parable of the lost son that Jesus told to his followers. And so he kind of reflected on his experience looking at the painting and that parable. And it was transformative for him, as his book has been transformative for me. And so here's a reflection that he wrote towards the end of the book. And this is after kind of exploring a lot of the characters that you see in the painting and the way that they're kind of positioned or painted, depicted. And he says this: "For most of my life, I have struggled to find God, to know God, to love God. I have tried hard to follow the guidelines of the spiritual life, pray always, work for others, read the scriptures, and to avoid the many temptations to dissipate myself. I have failed many times, but always tried again, even when I was close to despair. Now I wonder whether I have sufficiently realized that during all this time, God has been trying to find me, to know me, to love me. The question is not how am I to find God, but how am I to let myself be found by him? The question is not how am I to know God, but how am I to let myself be known by God? And finally, the question is not how am I to love God, but how am I to let myself be loved by God? God is looking into the distance for me, trying to find me, and longing to bring me home. And I didn't include this here, but I wanted to read just a couple more sentences from this passage. In all three parables which Jesus tells in response to the question of why he eats with sinners, he puts the emphasis on God's initiative. God is the shepherd who goes looking for his lost sheep. God is the woman who lights a lamp, sweeps out the house, and searches everywhere for her lost coin until she has found it. God is the father who watches and waits for his children, runs out to meet them, embraces them, pleads with them, begs and urges them to come home. As a mom, do you know that in this whatever season you are in of motherhood, that God is looking for you and wanting to know you right now? Most of us know that God knows us. And a lot of times, it's easy to say God knows everything, so we know he knows us. But it's not just a knows everything, knows us. It's a want to, relational, experiential, knows us, searches for us, looks for us. Before I graduated from college, I was wrestling with a decision of whether to pursue further education in writing or to go into full-time ministry. I chose full-time ministry, and in the fall, moved to Germany, where I was working with college students in a small ministry team. And I was fairly new. I wasn't new in my faith, but new in learning how to live it out. And so when I was wrestling with that decision, the choice of writing felt not wrong, but not enough. So that's just some hindsight into my journey, so it'll inform the rest of what I share. So I went into full-time ministry and was working with college students, and halfway through that first year, our team, along with all these teams that were in Western Europe, went to Spain for this mid-year conference. It was a retreat. Our lives were busy, our jobs were busy, our schedules were busy, and so this was a retreat where we were gonna get poured into, where we were with other teams and we could talk, about what we were doing, how things were going, and just rest. It was beautiful. It was on the coast of Spain, and it was there where I met this family, and they had been living in Italy for years, and they were, doing ministry there with the same organization, and I was just enamored with them. And up until that point, what you need to know is that I had never dreamt of becoming a mom. It wasn't really, I had maybe thought about it, but it wasn't this big dream for me. It wasn't something that I was super excited about thinking about. Some of that was because my relationship with my mom was very fractured. And so naturally, I think it wasn't something where I was like, oh, I want to do this again, but in a different way. It just wasn't something I was super excited about. But when I saw this family, there was like this, a little light bulb that went off. And for the first time, I thought, oh, that's a really cool picture of motherhood. And a little more information, it was a shallow view. I saw this woman that was like really put together. She could speak Italian fluently. She could speak English, obviously. Her and her husband were like going in and out Italian, English. And these three little like sun-kissed kids were running around speaking Italian, speaking English, and they were talking about their ministry, to Italians, and they were talking about using art and using food. And I'm just like floored, like, okay, if this is what motherhood looks like, I'll sign up for this. Like, I could do this, And I just honestly, a lot of it was shallow. It was just a glimpse, kind of like we see on social media. It was this little glimpse, this put together woman and her family, which she very, very well may have been all of that, in another setting. But it was this little glimpse. And suddenly I had this ideal. And I put it in the back of my head. And then when, our team, when my friends and I would talk about the future, it was always kind of there. And it wasn't even really that woman. It wasn't even really that family. But it was like this ideal. That's what motherhood should look like. I didn't want it to look like kind of what I had grown up with, but only because I hadn't dealt with a lot of things that I needed to deal with. So anyway, I'm sharing this here because this was the beginning of a phantom mom that I held in high esteem and felt I needed to become. the fact that it was in a spiritual setting and a faith setting, and there were a lot of great things like that I was looking up to in her. I mean, maybe not the style and the, all the like being a jet setter, like the missionary, I guess that's good. But there were all these things that I look up to in her, and they weren't necessarily bad. A lot of them were really great things, right, on the surface. But it became this phantom mom, which morphed over time as I grew and as I actually became a mom and like had a reality in front of me. It was this ideal, and it wasn't just that I was trying to get to that, I was also running from another phantom mom. We all have phantom moms, whether we're aware of it or not. They're there, whether they're pieces of a lot of different things we've seen, and we carry them around. Phantom moms prey on our fears, and they are fueled. I completely am forgetting about this. Sorry. Phantom moms prey on our fears and are fueled by the shame that we carry within. Phantom moms prey on our fears, and they are fueled by the shame that we carry within. All of the things that I hadn't worked through, some of the pain of my past, these long years I'd spent rejecting my Koreanness, large parts of who I was, those things were directly related to my mom and my relationship with her. You see, my mom carried this message for as long as I can remember, and even before she described it, she carried this message with her of being an unfit mom. That was something that was actually spoken over her 10 years before I was born. A lot of it had to do with the fact that when she became a mom, she immigrated to a new country. She couldn't speak the language. She had a lack of support, and becoming a mom in that environment was very difficult. So those words were spoken over her, and she lived wrestling with that from that point on, and then on into my experience of her as my mom. So I know some of you are not only weary today, and maybe some of you aren't weary and you feel great, and that's awesome. From the everyday real realities of motherhood, every season is so hard. At least that's what it's been for me so far. Maybe that will change someday, but I don't think so. But I think that some of us are also weary and exhausted with a whole nother layer because we're running from one phantom mom and trying to catch up with another. So this morning, as we kind of talk about a little bit more, I want to invite you, and even myself, because I think this is an ongoing thing, just to take one step towards releasing both, whatever they are for you right now. I am going to read a passage from Matthew 11, and it's from the First Nations version, which is, if you haven't heard of it, it's something by InterVarsity Press. It's an indigenous translation of the New Testament. I love it, in part because it's just so nice to read something in fresh language that's become so familiar that I kind of gloss over. So I want to read this to you before we go any further. Maybe. Okay. So above this little passage, before 11:28 starts, it says, "Then he lifted his eyes to the horizon," talking about Jesus, "as if he were speaking to all the world. 'Come close to my side, you whose hearts are on the ground. You who are pushed down and worn out, and I will refresh you. Follow my teachings and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest from your troubled thoughts. Walk by my side with me, and I will share in your heavy load and make it light." So in my own parenting journey thus far, and I'm very much in the thick of it, I have consistently come up against this wall of not knowing what to do or how to do what's right and best. Honestly, that's been the most consistent companion of my motherhood journey. I don't know if any of you can relate, but in response to that, oftentimes, especially when my kids were a lot smaller, I have shoulded myself almost to the point of despair. With those phantom moms in mind, again, I should not be like this. I should be like this. I've had seasons even where being in community, even like this, has been painful because I felt so lost and like I was doing such a terrible job. And like everyone else around me kind of had it together. Or maybe we would talk about something small, but the depth of how I felt like I didn't know what I was doing was so much greater. And, looking back, I wasn't doing a terrible job, but what I was doing was trying to be someone that I wasn't, especially as a mom. I was trying to hide my shortcomings and all the places that I felt such lack in. I was running from this label of unfit mom. I didn't want to get close to that. And in doing so, running from myself, running from my own mom, and trying to get to this other phantom that I was sure would free me from that. And at this point, as a mom, it's not like I had a whole person that I was running towards. It was little things, like specifically for me, running from my Koreanness without even being aware that I was doing it sometimes because, that was, if I looked back at the stories I was told, that was what was kind of told to my mom. It was her Koreanness that made her an unfit mom in the setting that she was in. So running from that, it was just marked on her as a new immigrant. Running from that, making sure that, I could say things, clearly, even though I grew up here and can speak English. It was just this, there was an emphasis on that. I had to know, I had to understand, I had to be able to, make sense, right? So there was that. There were a lot of other things too, where it was like, if only I could just get to the point where I was feeding my kids food that I made. That's a great thing. All organic food. If only I could remember not to forget to do all the papers that come home from school. These were like little things, but it all went with this phantom mom that I followed. If only all my kids were healthy. If only they didn't play video games as much as they did. If only, a lot of shoulds, I've got to get to this point. Because then what? I don't know. Then I won't be an unfit mom. My kids won't have an unfit mom. There's a lot of scientific evidence that points to intergenerational trauma, and I write about this in my book quite a bit, and we don't have time to deep dive into all of that. But in a nutshell, how this relates to our mothering is that in our genes, we carry some of the trauma of our mothers and fathers, and their mothers and fathers before them. And I think for a long time I thought, you know what? Oh, well, now I'm born, I'm starting a family, we just start fresh. Page one, forget about what's happened in the past. But for example, I've carried for a long time this deep grief over not having my grandparents. I didn't lose them during my lifetime. My mom lost them when she was 13 and younger. And yet, because no one taught me that you can carry some of that grief, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't want to talk about it with anyone because it didn't make sense, at the time when I was younger, a younger mom. Trauma can pass through our wombs. And if we don't acknowledge that, we will be much more prone to chasing phantom moms and not being able to move towards healing and hope. So as I said, I found myself trying to become what I thought was the ideal in motherhood. And I think sometimes, if we're honest, it can be harder in spaces of faith, even though this is where we gain most of our support and real support that's really important. I think sometimes the shoulds can come a little bit louder in spaces like this. And it makes sense that it would be that way. Saying some of those things out loud is kind of embarrassing to me when I look back and I think, who cares if my kids eat organic? And that's changed. But I think until we voice those things, they still have power over us. So until we're saying, okay, I guess I think that it should be this way. And again, those are not bad things in and of themselves. But until we voice those things and we voice how important it is to us, they still have power over us, and we are kind of still running towards those things. And here's what I want you to hear and what I need to hear repeatedly every single day, and what I hope that sinks deep into your hearts, something you might already know, but maybe afresh in a new way, is that all Jesus wants you to do, all Jesus wants me to do, is to mother from our belovedness. The only thing we need to run towards as moms isn't an elusive, unattainable phantom. It's our belovedness. And this goes for all the varied roles we have and the multitudes that we are. We are more than moms, and I mean that in the most expansive way, not in a way that demeans our motherhood or our role as moms, in all those areas. All Jesus wants us to do is to mother, to live, to work, to whatever, fill in the blank, from our belovedness. So kind of with that in mind, I feel like I've been talking a mile a minute here. I want to close with a prompt, because the only thing that I think has helped me recognize those phantoms, other than facing them, verbally releasing them with others and with God, and a long journey of doing that, is going back to my belovedness. Anything I can do to go back to that part of my identity as a beloved daughter of God and all the multitudes that I have. And in my motherhood, I've really needed it a lot, because those voices have been really loud, specifically in my mothering. And I don't know if it's true for you, but I would think that, it's a hard role. And so I think that this is a place that we're going to get hit a lot to do something other than chase our belovedness, or not chase our belovedness, but to live from our belovedness. So I've done this prompt with a few small groups and online, but I want to do it with you guys here today. And the question is just, what reminds you of your belovedness? I think it's on your handout. But going back to this painting that was there, I think one word that has popped up for me when I've done Visio Divina, or when I've looked at that, is just the belovedness of the Son. The belovedness that the Father wraps around him. And I think we can picture, it's a father-son, but we can picture mothers. I tried to look for another image of a mother and daughter that kind of reflected this, and I couldn't find anything, at least not anything that I wanted to put up there. So there's that. But I just, in his hands and the way he's leaning toward his son, I see belovedness, and I just want that, I want that so much, more of it all of the time. And so one thing that I've been asking myself, that I've been doing in other groups, is asking people, what reminds you of your belovedness? In some ways, it's kind of like practicing gratitude, but for me, there's another piece to it where it's this receiving of our belovedness, when we acknowledge these things that have reminded us of who we are. It's not just these are things I should be thankful for, these are good things, and I have to name them and write them down, which is great, and I do practice that, but it's also this practice that I think asks you to receive. So I'm going to read mine from a few weeks ago, but want to say that yours can be totally different. It doesn't have to look anything like mine. I think it's up on the screen. You probably can't read that, but I'll just read mine. So mine are: come as you are, the ritual of evening tea with my husband, open windows and cricket songs at night, lotus blooms, nickel plate walks with my friend, gazing at the moon, handwritten letters, old photographs, Andrew Peterson singing "Be Kind to Yourself," sambap, jjigae, and kimchi, hot baths, cobblestone paths, train rides and bike rides, my kids' smiles, traveling with my family, representation on bookshelves and television screens, in yearbooks and churches and neighborhood gatherings, folding dumplings, that text to check in, peonies and hibiscus leaves, I'm listening, breath prayers and journaling, art museums and libraries, when someone's willing to go there with me. Curiosity, unassimilated space, permission to unravel, stories shared, tigers and magpies, Emmanuel here and there, again and again, never leaving me, the ocean and ice cream. So those are just some things for me lately and things that I remember. So if you want to close your eyes for a minute, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then I will close us in prayer. And I'm going to leave a little silent space, and let's just befriend that silence. If you fall asleep, that's fine too. Again, what reminds you that you are beloved? What would it look like to mother from a place of belovedness. What details in your own life do you need to stop rejecting or hiding? What phantom moms do you need to release to receive your belovedness? Abba, Father, our Creator, Emmanuel, who is as close as our breath. Thank you for looking for us, searching for us, for wanting to know us and love us wholly. Be with us and help us to release what needs to be released and receive your love. Help us help one another to do the same. Show us our belovedness. We are the coins you found, the sheep you've gone looking for, your daughters who have come home. Amen.
Well, we just have a little thank you token of our appreciation for coming today, Tasha. Thank you. And you guys, she mentioned her book. I have some books for you. Who wants to be a winner today? So exciting. So we have a book to give to each table. So I have one for each table. And also your leaders each are getting a copy too. So maybe you can read her book and then share, take turns reading it. Or if you want to purchase one for yourself, Tasha has some available as well. So we can do that. So if you are feeling like you're sitting in the right seat, this is just like old school, old time, okay? There's something on the bottom of your chair. There's one at each table, so you can feel it from where you're sitting. You don't have to like crawl. It's on the side. It might be on the left side of your chair, like a Post-it. There's a little Post-it note from one chair on each table. So somebody's going to win a book. And if you are a leader, then give it to the person sitting next to you. Are you finding it? Hey, you got one. Awesome. Congratulations. We have some winners. Was it yours? You got it, Jasmine. Congratulations. Enjoy. Oh, it's on. Okay, give it to someone who's not a leader in your group. Yay, and then you can share. So fun. I'm going to set this. There you go. Enjoy Tasha's book. There it is. Bethany found it. Congratulations, you win. Hey, Lizzie's going to win at this table. Enjoy. And many thanks to Tasha for being with us today. And I'm sure that she's open if anybody has questions or wants to ask her more afterwards. Feel free to do that. We do have the questions in your app, like we have been doing this week. And as I said, she has some books available as well. So thanks for being here. Enjoy your small group time.